So one of the things that people ask me sometimes is whether I want to try to live in Thailand again. I did do that mostly in 2018 and early into 2019, and it was a great experience. It was also quite a learning experience. There were some things that I realized that I had not planned through fully about. And so in this video, I wanted to talk about a few of those things. For me, basically, I had traveled to Thailand a couple of times, and I was really swept away by the beauty of it. There was aspects of being in Thailand that for me were so new and so magical that it just felt like a constant process of discovery. For me, after having traveled to Thailand a couple of times, I took a good look at my life and I was thinking that the circumstances were that I could make a move, and most of the responsibilities and matters that were going on in my life here in the United States were at a point of stability, at a point of not a lot of action going on. And so the idea of kind of picking up and moving just became a real viable possibility for me at that time. This was a few years ago. So this was before the whole COVID situation came upon everything. And I did kind of change everything. I did kind of handle my affairs thoroughly and went and lived there. I had a couple of friends who were living in Pattaya, and that's where I first started out. But then I started to explore other regions of the country using the local airline carrier to travel within the country. And I was traveling around with one of my two friends that were there. And we went to a few cities. We went to Chiang Mai, we went to Udon Thani, we went to Korat. And after doing that, I started feeling increasingly that I wanted to move out of Pattaya and chose to move to Chiang Mai at that point in time. And at that point, I mean, it was great. There was the old city, the ancient temples, the culture was quite thriving. There was so much to see and do. But I think that early on I made a couple of errors in judgment. And one of the mistakes, if I can call it that, a mistake that I made was somewhat prior to that, while I was still in Pattaya, which was buying a car. So what I did after I had been already living there for a couple of months is I bought a second-hand car, Musong, and Rot Musong, Bangkang. Sometimes when you buy a second-hand car, and this is true anywhere, there can be problems that will come up with it mechanically. And that did happen. I started to having to do repairs to it, and that became a little bit burdensome. But another factor, and this was true pretty much for the entire time I had it, was that increasingly, one thing you got to be aware of is that in Thailand, probably it felt like about 50% of the vehicles on the road are motorbikes or motor scooters. And they do tend to move very quickly around you from different sides, kind of weaving in and out of traffic. And this is something that, as somebody who's familiar with driving in the United States, I mean, United States drivers are pretty bad in many cases, but you don't really have the situation of this very large number of motorbikes that are continually moving in and out of traffic, and many times in ways that are unpredictable. You think you're driving as safely as possible, and then suddenly you realize there's somebody just a couple of feet in front of you moving in ways that are kind of you can't be fully prepared for. And so little by little, increasingly, I started to feel worried that there'd be an accident. Possibly, if one had an accident with somebody who was on a motorbike, that the driver of the motorbike and anybody with them, often there'll be multiple people on one motorbike, would fall on the street and there could be serious injuries. And this started causing me a lot of concern. I started driving so carefully that maybe I was maybe driving too carefully. Thankfully, nothing like that ever happened, although I did have one very slight fender bender with a pickup truck. Yeah, so when I had made the decision to move to Chiang Mai, in the beginning I was living in a hotel where you could pay by the week, and it was right near the southwest corner of the old city, and there was a view of Doi Satet right out from the window of the room, and I probably should have stayed there. I was already driving at the time. I had the vehicle, Thai driver's license, the whole thing. But I made the decision to rent a house, and it was a nice place. Cost was very affordable, of course. But it was several miles north. It was probably about maybe 7 miles north of the old city, along Tanon Doi Saket. And what I had not planned for, and I hadn't researched it carefully enough, was that every day there would be a horrible traffic jam, mostly in the mornings and in the afternoons, kind of like in other countries. But it was a traffic jam that was so bad that often you'd be at a standstill on the boulevard there, where you might not even move for several minutes and then slightly move, because there were red lights that would take a long time. So if I had it to do over, what I would have done is to stay in that very pleasant and also very affordable hotel, the one that had the great view of the mountain and of the old city. And if you went into the hallway, looking out of a window, you could see Wat Chedi Luang. And seeing that at night lit up was just a magnificent view. So I've written down here the opinion that I have after being there is Rong Payaban Ti Thai Di Mak De Khao Jai Po Ti Lua Gyogap Gan Pad Dai Mai. And what it means essentially is that the hospitals and the quality of care available in Thailand are quite good. But do you have, as a foreigner thinking about living there, does one have the ability to consider options well enough to make decisions about medical care? Now, I did have an experience where I had a brief sciatica problem while I was there, and I went and saw a doctor. And the doctor spoke English, the nurses spoke English, but the level of their English ability was pretty good, but not to the level where I felt completely confident about making the decisions that I wanted to make. And so, and this was true for me because I'm learning Thai. I mean, obviously you can see I can write in Thai language to some extent. But once I would start interacting by speaking Thai, whether it was pretty good or whether I was speaking haltingly, sometimes the person I was talking with would then switch to Thai and begin speaking faster than I could really follow. And so then again you have the challenge, okay, am I really understanding sufficiently to make decisions, that are significant decisions about medical care or that sort of thing? So that was something that presented some hesitancy, some reconsideration about the idea of living there long term. I know for myself that I'm very motivated to, and I think that if I try hard enough, and certainly in traveling to Thailand again more, having the opportunity to speak the language a lot more, that I can become closer and closer to being fluent. That sort of thing obviously would enhance and improve the experience of the idea of living in Thailand. Interestingly enough, my reading and writing ability is actually better than my speaking ability. For example, I'm currently reading Lord of the Rings in Thai language, and I can text fairly rapidly writing in Thai, but I really have a fairly long way to go in terms of comprehension while listening and also speaking ability. One of the many considerations that plays a part in the idea of thinking about moving to Thailand, I mean, obviously that is a larger step than traveling to Thailand, even if one travels for longer durations. Like, for example, traveling for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, something like that. And that's a significant amount of time. But then one of the things that can be a consideration for people that are thinking of wishing to live there longer term, as long as you have the proper visa and all that, is working there. And one of from the limited number of things that a foreigner can do to work while in Thailand is in fact teaching English. So ทำงานเป็นครูสอนภาษาอังกฤษที่ประเทศไทยได้ I have completed an online course of study from the International TEFL and TESOL training school, and I can go further with that, but the level of certification that I've received so far would be sufficient for a portion of the possible English teaching opportunities that would exist. It would make me eligible to be able to apply for some of those. And that is a consideration. I mean, I think that there are some people who are very comfortable financially and would not need to think about working in order to support themselves. And yet, another layer to that is sometimes when you're living there longer term, even if you are wealthy and have plenty of money, having an activity in your day where you have this sort of routine that gives you something to build your life around. And so I think that being an English teacher is an aspect that can address that. So in conclusion, addressing the idea of potentially living in Thailand again, that may occur at some point in the future. I do know that I am interested in traveling to Thailand currently again. And given that the Thai government is taking steps to remove a lot of the stronger, more severe COVID restrictions, I think that really is something that's going to increase the number of people who wish to travel to Thailand, many of whom did not over the last few years. And so that is certainly something that I would see myself doing. I think that the circumstances are now much more favorable for that.